Greetings again. In this part of our time together this afternoon, I would like to talk with you about a concept called companioning and how it is we can accompany people on their last journey of this life in different ways. And I found most helpful some teaching of a man named Alan Wolfelt, who is a grief specialist in the United States, and he actually introduced me to this concept of companioning people in grief. And I have found them particularly helpful, not just for grief situations, but for how it is that we interact with people who are in the later stages of their life. Because I think the principle is universal. We have provided for you a sheet with these on them, and I'm just going to read off a few of them as they lead into this section that we're going to talk about how to companion people. Companioning is about being present to another person's pain. It's not about taking away their pain. Companioning is about going into the wilderness of the soul of another human being. It is not about thinking that you are responsible for finding the way out for them. Companioning is about honoring the spirit. It's not about analyzing with our heads. Companioning is about learning to listen with our hearts, not analyzing with the head. Again. Companioning is about bearing witness to the struggles that others are having, not about judging those struggles or directing those struggles. Companioning is about discovering the gifts of sacred silence, learning the art of not filling up every moment with words. Companioning is about learning to be still and not frantically trying to get things done. And those are just some of them that seem particularly applicable to our time now. So as we talk about companioning people, here's a couple of approaches that I find helpful. One is recognizing that music can play a very important role in a patient's life in their last months of their life, or the last weeks of their life, or the last days or hours of their life. My first experience with this was with a 90-year-old lady who had been in a coma for over 3 days. She had not had one thing to eat and had nothing to drink for those days. For several days, she had no longer communicated anything with her family. Her eyes were closed, no longer responsive to family, to caregivers who would talk to her or touch her or try to give her cares. So the family called me and they asked me to go visit her. And so for some reason, I decided on the spur of the moment to take my guitar with me. And I sat down next to her and I began to play quietly and sing a song from her church history, Amazing Grace. And I began to play quietly and singing very quietly, only to have her, in her coma-like state, with her eyes still closed, begin to sing with me. Not a single word was expressed between us, just this song. And she sang every word of every verse and stanza of the song, which was so surprising because everybody assumed that she was no longer with any awareness at all. And I left a short while later to report to her family about this experience. And then she died only hours later. And this was her last interaction with anyone on this earth. Some years later, I met a lady who has Alzheimer's, and I was trying to imagine how it might be that I would have a meaningful interaction with her because my first visit had been largely about observing and listening and asking family about her and listening carefully to her as she attempted to speak. And actually, she was speaking. She was speaking a lot, in fact, quite incessantly. But this patient could only speak in what we refer to as word salad. Random words that have no apparent connection between them, no coherence of thought expression. So I wondered about the guitar and as possibly something that would be meaningful to her. So my next visit, I came guitar in hand. I had had experiences where even just the presence of a guitar can sometimes interrupt confused thought patterns. And so I brought my guitar and sat down with her, and she started her nonstop talking without coherence of thought. And when she stopped talking for just a brief moment, I jumped in with the guitar and started to play. And she stopped talking when she heard the music. And I began to sing a song that she would know from her history. And instantly, her jumbled words stopped. And she strung together in perfect, meaningful sequence words as she sang songs from some distant memory in her life. This became our weekly pattern. I would bring her the gift of words via these songs, and for a moment, her words and I think her thoughts began to come together with order and with meaning. And I could tell it was significant to her because tears would flow down her face. And then simultaneously, I began to meet people that they call music thanatologists, and they're usually utilizing harps for the soft tone and the texture of the instrument, accompanying individuals, usually in their last days, hours, minutes of their life, with harp music, quite skillfully. And I paid attention to the way that they would talk about their work and their training, and that I had realized that I had been instinctively learning to do some similar work with my guitar and voice. And so perhaps this would be appropriate for us here in Bolivia because of the love for the guitar and the charango. So let's talk about this for just a few moments. Related to music, voice and words can sometimes be helpful when helping a person reattach to a time, to reattach to a place, a feeling in their life. It's similar to life review verbally, but via music. The familiar words associated with a tune can transport a person back to somewhere, some time that felt significant to them. And when a patient is not obviously near to death, this particular mode of using music can provide a pleasant revisiting, which is helpful to the soul of the patient. But words in music can also compete with thought, with memory, or words being read. For example, if you have a train of thought, it can be interrupted by music with words, no? Or let me try it this way. If you are studying or reading to music, have you ever noticed how much easier it is to study and to read to instrumental music with no words? Because words in the music will compete with the words that you are trying to internalize while you're reading them. Well, this is a function of kind of left brain, right brain studies, or left brain, right brain working together. So with this in mind, at the latter stages of disease progression, particularly when a patient is in a coma or sleeping a lot, words and music can be a distraction for the patient. And the reason is that we understand that people who are in their final hours or their final days, minutes, are often beginning to go on their own journey. They may be having conversations with people who have died before them. Sometimes they are visualizing those people or having conversations or hearing conversations. Perhaps this is some divine preparation for their crossing to the other side. So this is why I do not try to force my way into a patient's consciousness with loud talk or shaking them, trying to get them to wake up or look at me, because they are on a journey. The journey that patient is making is their journey, not mine. So the question is, how can I observe and support their journey? Can I be with them? Can we be with them? How can we encourage them? How can we let them know that we are with them, even though we understand that they are making their own solitary journey? And I believe that this happens energetically. I think this happens best when we learn to be aware of our own energy and learn to be attentive to the patient's energy. I walk into a room and I watch and I listen. I'm asking myself, where is my patient at physically? Are they showing signs of pain? Where is my patient emotionally? Are they at rest? Does it look like it's good rest? What is their breathing like? And then I will quietly tell my patient that I am there with them. And we believe that patients who appear to be sleeping or comatose have an acute sense of hearing, a sense of what's going on around them, even though their eyes are closed. And as much as is possible, I want to match the energy situation of my patient, which means I don't want to come in hurried and harried and busy and trying to get things done, in bringing that kind of energy into the room of the patient who is trying to say goodbye to this life. Their body is slowing down. Their mind is likely drifting off into other new realities. They are trying to separate from their list of things to do, letting go of the things that they've spent their life being concerned about. So in contrast, I watch them. And I watch their breathing, and I watch for signs of activity. Sometimes I'll see their eyes moving under their eyelid, which is a sign of visualization going on. Maybe they'll be reaching out with their hands to someone you can't see. But all of this leads us back to music. Okay. So of course, you and I understand that music can not only help us with life review, but it can impact our nervous system, no? Fast rhythmic music can increase our heart rate, our energy, but we can also calm our minds and our bodies with slower or less rhythmic music. So when I have a patient who's comatose or sleeping, it would be really inconsiderate for me to start strumming loudly or quickly, working against this slowing down path that they are on. So with the guitar, I begin to play. But I'm not playing for them. I'm playing with them. And the way I begin to play with them is by matching their breathing with very little rhythm, because breathing is usually changed to something more erratic. And I play on the downbeat of their inhale, their exhale. And let me show you some examples. But there are ways to do this that are not dependent upon the use of music. I take the same principle and can apply it to simply being with someone. And it's referred to as pacing, and it provided you a document for your own reference and practice in this. One of the ways that I come into alignment with patients is by being still and by being attentive. I start to breathe with the patient. I match their breathing pattern in depth, in shallowness, and in pace, whether fast or slow. Again, this is about matching their energy. And when I take time and immediately to breathe with a patient, it helps me become empathetic to what is going on in their body and spirit, what it might be going through. And my energy is not then competing with theirs. What is happening is that I am coming into solidarity with them. And another way to do this is via light touch. I never touch a patient without asking them first, or quietly preparing for them for the fact that I am there and that I will place my hand on their wrist. And as they breathe in, I will lightly squeeze, increasingly to the top of their breath. And as they exhale, I will slowly release my grip. And the physiology of this, I believe, is important. Not only is touch helpful, but it's a physical way of reiterating your presence and being aware of exactly where they are and what they're going through. So this matching of breath and of hand squeeze. Recently, I was with a male patient who was nearing his last days on earth. And I had this feeling one day that I should just show up unannounced at the facility where he was. I assumed that his wife would be present with him. And I had heard that he had been somehow agitated and had some unaddressed pain. So when I showed up, I found him breathing very shallowly but steady, with some signs of agitation and pain, as I had heard. But his wife was by his side, and she said, "Can you play guitar for him? It's his favorite instrument." And she moved to sit at the feet of his bed. And I sat next to the head of the bed, and I began to play my guitar. And I played to match his breathing. After about 15 to 20 minutes, his breathing changed, and I saw him take a rather deep breath, followed by a pause. And another deep breath, followed by a long pause. And I noticed the change, and I suggested to his wife that she should talk to him. So I switched chairs with her. She sat next to his head, and I sat by his feet, and she spoke to him softly, and I continued to play more slowly, even more slowly. And eventually, he took another deep breath and had a long pause that never ended. And we continued to sit there for another 30 minutes. We didn't tell a soul. We didn't alert the nurses. We didn't alert the doctors, because we knew as soon as we alerted everybody and everything gets frantic and busy. So we sat there in this room, and I kept playing guitar. And she kept talking to him, stroking his hair, stroking his face, thanking him, blessing him. setting him free. And approximately 30 minutes later, after his last breath, she said she had the time she needed. She was ready for everybody else to know.